The Wall. Yes, tell all your friends. Jim's going to talk about the Nostalgia Critic's The Wall review. In the past week, there's been so much talk about this thing, and I oddly have watched way too much stuff about this review. And it does become a bit of a fascinating thing. It's probably the big hate watch thing of the year for YouTube, and I sort of get it, because it's much like the Cats trailer. You can't help but watch it. You can't help but be fascinated by it. But unlike, I'm not sure where Cats is going to go, but it was really bad. I will say I'm happy for him that he was artistically doing something different, expanding upon his art in some way and changing what he was doing. I thought, I applaud him for doing that. I think that is not an easy thing to do. That is a hard thing to do, and especially for someone who's been doing it as long as he's been doing it. He doesn't do that a lot, and we're always talking about how boring and bland he is, and I think he did try. I think it failed, and it failed for a lot of reasons. The thing with The Wall and his review of The Wall is that, why do this movie? There's nothing that's really like demanding us to talk about The Wall right now. And I think the biggest problem with the Nostalgia Critic is he basically picks from what were big movies at the time. And it seems like basically he's resting on the laurels of, I was a kid around the time he was a kid. And you sort of know the same movies, the same old movies that people would rent. And back in the day, when you and your dad and your family went to the video store, you went to the video store for friends, you had to come back with something. There was no debate on the new releases were out, I just came home. Nobody did that. You had to get something. So older movies were a little more talked about regularly. And The Wall, if you're into Pink Floyd and stuff, was one of them. And so I get he eventually had to come to it because he's basically reviewed literally everything from his childhood. And he's like, well, this was one of those movies. And it does feel like he's kind of come to it in that fashion. It doesn't feel like he has necessarily a love for it. But as well as I think the biggest thing with him, and it's interesting because Lindsay Ellis came from Channel Awesome, Todd in the Shadows, who I watch a lot. A lot of good critics, I would say, who I'm probably not as familiar with, but I'm sure you guys are. Have points to their review. They have a thesis for what they're saying. What was the thesis of his review of The Wall? That it's pretentious, that, all these kind of really very surface level complaints about it that anyone would say. And I don't really want someone telling me what an art house movie is when I'm pretty sure he doesn't know what an art house theater is. I just think he is really kind of pathetic in his choices, in that he could expand on things, he could understand more about cinema. And I actually really liked his thing on Secret of Nim recently, and I think there is when he really cares about a movie, he really actually has interesting things to say about it. But The Wall, he didn't. And even what he said, what really actually offended me about it was the Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, where he brings up that you should just have some balls and get over high school. And it's dude, first off, shut the fuck up. But secondly, what the teacher does in that scene, I don't know if you've ever had something you've written kind of destroyed and humiliated in front of a group of people, but it's pretty horrific, and it's pretty hard to go through, especially when you're a kid. Even though that scene is lame, and The Wall is lame to a certain regard, he should be able to understand the emotions of those scenes and understand what the meaning of that is. And clearly Doug Walker always does the thing where he kind of doesn't like to go to any extreme, because he's basically been fairly successful for a while. He doesn't seem to have any real hardships or anything. I don't know his life or it, but it just feels through his review style. I remember he did a review of The Purge, and he's I think we need a few more steps than that society would fall apart. But I'm you're missing the paranoia and the edge of the film to kind of just dissuade everyone and tuck us all into bed, but you're not being a good critic by doing that. You're basically making everyone feel safe. What's different from Nostalgia Critic to Lights, Camera, Action Jackson or everything? He doesn't really understand much of what's going on. He just passes over everything. He's sort of your boring dad who reviews a movie and doesn't really understand the mechanics of it, and he's never really evolved much from that. He got to be big at a time where there wasn't many people there, but he's not special enough to kind of keep this going. And nothing he was saying with The Wall made me it just felt like a series of kind of complaints strung together, barely making a review. And what the fuck was with that SpongeBob thing? Why is he dragging SpongeBob into this and making clearly he thinks lesser of SpongeBob to be kind of a light joke at the end? I I don't know. And Nolan brings up, Nolan's in the chat. Thanks, Nolan. Hey, Nolan, how are you doing? He brings up he doesn't know that the wall was written from a different perspective at a different time, which is very true, and the schools in the UK at the time he grew up were awful, and that is true. That is actually a very good point. And English schools, particularly boarding schools, there are various stories about that and how hard that is for kids and how some kids don't even come back the same. Like, that's how hard they are. And, you know, Doug went to a nice, like, Midwest school or wherever the fuck and had a good time. And, you know, I'm sure someone teased him a little bit. But, like, you know, just... I think he really isn't someone who's listening to critical discourse and understanding it and then, like, shitting on Twitter, which I don't... Has he ever tweeted? I don't know. He probably has. I just don't really... I think this review is kind of, like, even for him, really horrifically bad, but it's sort of sad that it's so horrifically bad because you sort of feel like he wanted to try, but then, like, why were him and the teacher, like, dancing above a city? Like, it's just, like... it's so bad and so awful. You kind of want to go into it, and it's just like I just don't understand what happened, like how it came. Like, I would watch a whole documentary on how they made this. Where are the people who made the Fire Festival? Whichever one was the better one, I forget now. They should make it on the making of the wall, because it was. Of not the Pink Floyd's The Wall, of this. It's just, you know, yeah, Roger Waters is pretentious. Yeah, you made all these points, but, like, have a new take on it or an interesting take, or, like, this is my perspective from it. But and then the guy from Slipknot's in it with his kid. Like, it's just so weird. It's just, like, it's sort of weird and insane and, like, highly interesting to watch people talk about, but it is really one of the worst things I think I've seen on YouTube this year. I really wish he would only make videos of things he's, like, really passionate about, because, like, that looked like such a financial loss. Like, it's just, like, it's depressing to think about, and I feel bad for the people who are just, like, employed there, but I guess, like, they like it. I don't know. I'm very curious. Someone needs to make a documentary about that, because I don't know. It's horrific. It's bad. And, like, I didn't even watch it in one sitting. I kept coming back to it and going, like, wait, he's complaining about the runtime. This video is, like, an hour long or something, even though I'm an hour long into my stream, but I guess that's a different thing, because he just wrote all these songs. I appreciate that he wanted to do just something different and did do something different, but I think he needs to understand the perspective of why he's doing it and not just doing something different. It's one thing to do it on, like, a short thing or a quick thing, but he just burned it out on all of this, and it was really bad. I hope someone at least tears down Doug's wall and, like, lets him sort of understand the nonsense he created, but I feel like he's so safe in his own bubble. He's actually trapped in his own wall, like the protagonist, and he'll never really break out of it, and we'll just continue getting these awful nonsense skits from him. So I'm excited for his next one like this, because wow.